Hello and welcome to this edition of Finweek Money Matters. Remember, this is the show that helps you manage your finances. I'm Demisho Greater. Coming up on the show today, we'll be taking a look at trends in today's youth marketing with ANDPEOPLE. And we'll also be discussing the outlook for investment holding company, that's Remgrow. And I'll be joined by a panel of experts to discuss the US Fed possibly hiking rates in the months to come and the impact it'll have on global economies. But before we get into all of that, do remember that we welcome your comments, so send them to us. You can send all your feedback to moneymatters@abn360.com. But first, let's take a look at the trend of the week. The number of youth aged 15 to 24 has reached the 200 million mark on the African continent. That's according to the World Bank. This number is expected to double by 2045, meaning Africa will be one of the world's fastest growing markets for consumer goods. But reaching the bulk of this market will mean being able to understand and influence its youth. In studio to tell me more about understanding youth culture is Andile Mbete, youth marketing strategist at ANDPEOPLE. Andile, thanks for your time. How did you get into this particular market, or what you do? Tell us what you do firstly, and how you get into youth marketing.
Thank you very much for having me. Well, essentially, I mean, a large part of my job is consists of people. So whether we work from a project to project basis, so a lot of it is either dealing with clients, suppliers, but more importantly, it's dealing with the youth and creators and influencers on the ground. So I spend most of my time sort of like on the phone, interacting with people, sending emails, which is kind of like the least fun part of the job, to be honest. But I think the most interesting part is doing the research and trying to understand sort of the scope that is youth culture, sort of the scope that's the youth market. And that happens mainly on the ground. You kind of have to be on the ground and engaged with the youth market. So it kind of means that you never switch off.
Yes.
So you're always working, but it's cool.
But tell us why this is important. I mean, you've decided to do this, so to go into youth marketing. Why is it important? Why is it important to do this? To know, or, you know, what the young people are thinking and doing.
Well, I mean, you said it in your intro. I think one of the biggest things is that the world globally is young. I mean, we live in a young world. Africa particularly is, you know, the median age of Africa is 20, and South Africa is 24. Apart from that, the sort of global spending power of the youth is about 2.4 trillion, US dollars. So that's sort of like the financial part of it. But I think for me, the most important thing is that you're talking to young people who are the world, essentially, are the most disruptive. They are the sort of like the benchmark of how we perceive ourselves, brands and culture. So I think not only they are the most important market to talk to, I think, in this day and age.
Which companies or brands are getting it right? They really do identify with this young demographic.
You know, I think there's a lot of brands that have had successes and failures, but I think the one brand that's consistently done it really well is Red Bull. Without a doubt, it's definitely Red Bull. Because I mean, for a brand that is actually the only product they already have is a energy drink. You know, it's a small little can. They've been really impactful in sort of engaging with youth culture and the youth market in a really sustainable, really intelligent way. If you look at what they've done in South Africa, for instance, you know, they have the Red Bull Studios in Cape Town, which is sort of become sort of like a hub for a lot of music that happens in Cape Town. That sort of investment from a brand and sort of youth culture spaces is quite valuable, and it sort of helps us exchange between the brand and the market itself. So
I remember seeing those Red Bull people on campus during the days, walking around with those. Everybody wanted to be, I wanted to be a Red Bull person at some point. What is it that companies or brands don't understand? You said there are successes, Red Bull being one of them. What are the misses that they just don't quite get?
You know, I think it really boils down to two things, I think, and I guess it's a big challenge for a lot of brands. It's being able to engage authentically. And authentically is honestly just being honest about who you are and what you do and why you want to be in that space. And also on the flip side of that is the sustainability part of it. You know, a lot of brands do really amazing things, but their biggest failures is they will do a really amazing campaign or sort of a really cool marketing idea and then come out of it really quickly. So it's about really building some sort of loyalty between you and the market.
Yeah, I mean, that consistency, obviously.
Exactly.
You said that you do a lot of research, so clients come to you, they want to know, Andile, what are young people thinking? So what kind of insights are you sharing with them? We're getting a quick, quick free update on what you do.
Okay, yeah, for sure.
Consultation.
I think one of the biggest things, you know, a lot of brands want to know, like companies want to know what the trends are. I think one of the biggest things, well, at least the way I look at it, is you should look beyond the trends. One of the biggest things you should look at is the drivers of young people. So trends are purely manifestations of these drivers. So I would say probably the three most interesting drivers that are happening with the youth now would be, you could look at sort of like the new sort of like social economy, so the value that comes with being sociable and social media.
Okay.
That's become sort of a new sort of way to sort of like establish your own value as an individual or see what's important. And you can see that in the manifest, like people do Instagram and stuff. So what's interesting, the manifestation of the social economy would be how people curate themselves on Instagram or on YouTube, on Twitter and stuff. Yeah. Another part of that would be looking at sort of like this new rise of sort of like civic engagement. Kids are a lot more active in sort of politics and society than sort of my generation and the generation before.
And we certainly saw it in the hashtag #FeesMus4 campaign.
Exactly.
That was
and
huge.
One of the most important things is that's going to drive how people perceive brands and how they want to be communicated with. And sort of, you know, so there's going to be an interesting way to see how that sort of manifests trends from there. So I think brands should always not necessarily look at the trends, just look at sort of what's happening behind the trends. It's like, so look at like how kids are interacting with the politics or how they use social media and stuff.
So you are currently under 30, which makes you still young.
Sort of,
But how do you keep abreast of what's happening? You said that, you know, you do a lot of research, you have to be keeping your finger on the pulse, but what do you do on a day-to-day basis? I mean, how can you identify with a, you know, an 18-year-old, a 25-year-old, and, you know, maybe even a 28, 29-year-old?
Look, it's a challenge, I'm not going to lie. It's a big challenge. But I mean, the internet is a really interesting thing because not only has it made everything accessible, it's made everything extremely democratic. So even me as a guy who feels old now, I can engage with a lot of you.
28!
I feel old. It's an interesting way to engage and sort of like, you know, see what's happening and sort of ask people like, what's happening, what is this? It's an interesting way to engage. And to be honest, just to stay curious. I think one of the biggest things is, you know, as you get older, you have different responsibilities, but it doesn't mean that you still can't at least find out, okay, who's this new band, you know, or what's happening out in Braamfontein kind of thing. So I think that's pretty much how I stay involved as much as I can.
Andile, thank you so much. You've certainly given us some insight into that youth market and why it is very important to us. Thanks so much. That was Andile Mbete. He is the youth marketing strategist at ANDPEOPLE. Now let's shift our focus to our punt of the week.